Are you going to be a positive influence, or are you going to be a destructive influence? Which one of these are you going to be? What's going on, people? The world is changing, opportunity is knocking, but what are you going to do about that opportunity? A lot of people say that they want to commit themselves to developing or being part of the process towards justice or the general welfare, but how many of those people actually are willing to do the hard work? That's the question. How many people are actually willing to learn what they need to learn, change habits, right? So that's what I'm putting these videos together for, because if your Facebook wall is anything like my Facebook wall, then it's pretty obvious that as much as there is a lot of enthusiasm right now, there's also a lot of ignorance, a lot of cockamamie plans, as they would say, that are floating around, right? So if to avoid being one of those, right, and to avoid actually working against your better interest, you have to become more sharp, right? You have to become more precise, especially with language. Because the one thing that you're going to find is that the bad actors, when it comes to language, are masters. So you too have to become a master of language. So if you listen to a lot of the neocon types that are making videos around this time, what you're going to find is that a lot of them are pushing this idea that liberalism and which they're associating and conflating with the Democratic Party, they're basically allowing them to be the scapegoats for all the problems that our society has. The apologists to empire are doing a quick sleight of hand where they're trying to take all of basically the sins of like imperial ideology, and they're applying those to liberalism, and by way of doing that, they're making it so that all the good things that have over the generations become associated with liberalism, that's actually what they're trying to get rid of. So you have to be sharp. It's not going to be easy. It used to be a lot easier to be good and to fight for the good. So what am I saying here? There's three distinctions that I think you need to understand. One is that most people, damn near everyone that calls themselves a liberal, isn't. And when I say that, that's the ones that would consider themselves concerned about their neighbor, the general welfare, and the public good, and all this stuff. So people that believe that call themselves liberals when they really shouldn't. Then you have the ones that call themselves liberals as well, but are most often accused of being covert conservatives. So these guys actually are the real liberals. In most cases, these people that call themselves liberals that are accused of being covert conservatives are actually liberals. And the third group, the people that call themselves conservatives, for the vast majority of the people that call themselves conservatives are actually liberals. So when they're making a kind of a sleight of hand, talking out of both sides of the mouth, saying that on one hand, liberalism is something that they have to destroy, but then conservatism is what you're going to replace it with. That's the trick. That's a trick. So don't fall for that. So why would I say that the majority of people that call themselves liberals aren't, or shouldn't even call themselves that? Because the majority of the ideas that has over time been associated with liberalism are only get that distinction by way of individuals whose agenda fostered these kinds of values, right? But in most of the cases, these individuals were going completely against the party that they were in. So there has never been a party that all of the members as a principle were moving towards the good, we'll say, right? At any given time, it was a small minority in any one of the groups that were actually pushing the positive agenda forward. And the rest, often reluctantly, were going along, kicking and screaming. But if you look at initially how liberalism comes onto the scene, right? It comes in with the empire. It comes in with Adam Smith as like the writer for the British East India Company, right? So if you look at the history of the British East India Company and you look at what their philosophy, worldview was in terms of their behavior worldwide, you would have to say, if you were being precise, you would think about the fact that that would be the motivation to some of the ideas that he was espousing. So ideas like free trade, where I have, a whole bunch of products that I'm gonna dump onto your nation and you can't make any kinds of restrictions on me that might prevent the values of your domestic products from going down. That's the negative side of free trade that's not as often emphasized. But if you're the empire, that's always how you would like the world policies to be, right? If you want to push opium on somebody and they domestically think that that's not necessarily going to benefit the society, then you push it with military might, right? So that's why a lot of the philosophies like might means right and means justifying the ends, these are all going to come out of the imperial ideology because it serves it. So there's no reason why you need to be married to the idea of liberalism, because if you actually look at the majority of its history, it was related to things that you would never associate yourself with. So any of the writers that you would generally, the British writers that you would generally see, that probably you were taught in high school, were the ones that founded the American Revolution. These types were all espousing this liberalism idea. So if you're, inspired by people like Martin Luther King or Franklin Roosevelt or John F. Kennedy, then you wouldn't necessarily call yourself a liberal. Although they were in liberal parties, or they associated themselves most closely with liberal groups, their actual individual ideologies was unique. Similar to each other, they were each following down a positive line, but they were not representing a general consensus of any kind at any time. So that's the first one. And then also you have to look at the use of the word during the history of America, right? So because a lot of these bad actor types are often spending a lot of their time talking about how the Democrat Party was the slave party. So if you say that, then I guess you're correct. But then if you add to that somehow that like the Republican Party is the opposite, then although you may be telling the truth within the context of a small period of time, if you're talking about now, then you're basically fibbing, right? Because just as much as the Democrat Party at that time was pro-free trade, which slavery comes as a result of free trade, right? So even though the Democrat Party in, Abraham Lincoln's time, and before that, Andrew Jackson's time, even though they were promoting free trade, a Republican today promotes free trade. So that's where the sleight of hand happens. So if you look at the history of America, right? You have, say, the party system history, right? It wasn't always just liberals, conservatives. That's not how it divides. That's the fraud. How it actually divides is Tories and American system people. So all those people that you're looking up to as liberals, Martin Luther King, FDR, Franklin, JFK, these are all people that were returned to the intention of the American system, with the part of it that was put forward by Alexander Hamilton and Benjamin Franklin and people like that, Gouverneur Morris. So that would be when you're thinking in your head of liberalism, often probably that's what you're thinking of, the line of the positive improvements to the nation. But if you look at it, it was, you have the Federalist Party with that Alexander Hamilton started, right? And then you have that party falls apart, right? Because it wasn't easy to keep the free traders out of the party, right? So when they had completely taken over the party, he splintered with the party and actually voted for someone in the Democrat-Republican Party, Jefferson. They were rivals, right? So the Federalist Party basically falls apart. The Democrat-Republican Party continues in their free trade ideas. Someone like Andrew Jackson comes along. So then the Whig Party was created to rebel against the Andrew Jackson native raider and all that stuff that Andrew Jackson was doing. So you get Clay and Lincoln and them in the Whig Party, but even the Whig Party wasn't 100% the American system or the general welfare system. What it was a mixed bag as well. So even Abraham Lincoln is kicked out of that party based on his desire to end slavery, right? So when the Democrat-Republican Party at this point, they were the free trade party, and the Whig Party had some American system people in it, but they had a lot of free trade people in it. So all we're talking about is ideology here. So then the Republican Party is created, right, with guided by Abraham Lincoln, or at least he was the one that made it popular, right? And then so that was the Republican Party. But the legacy of Republicans following Abraham Lincoln's legacy basically ends with William McKinley, right? People like Teddy Roosevelt were not doing the American system, right? A lot of their beliefs and all that were much more closer to the Adam Smith belief. They were might means right, ends justifying the means type of doctrines. So whatever connection that, say, the Republican Party used to have with the general welfare, the good, the American system, that left with the election of Teddy Roosevelt, or not even the election of him, when McKinley dies and he gets put into position. So when you're looking at it today, you can say that it's more recently that you've had within the Democratic Party people espousing ideas that were closer to American system ideas. But neither party has any monopoly on that. So what you really need to do is understand the principles themselves. So when you hear the principles, doesn't matter what party you're hearing it from, you'll know when the person is going for the good and the general welfare or when they're being a charlatan, and you'll be able to distinguish the two. What's the difference between Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson? If you can make that distinction, you'll be a lot less susceptible to charlatanism, right? Because it's a game that you need to strengthen yourself against, right? So all of these different individuals that have came across over time that we're continually mentioning during this period where this word liberalism has been around, these individuals, each of them, have acted with their own individual determination and courage, not based on being part of some group that was creating anything. So I hope that gave you a little opening to what you just need to start looking at. And soon enough, if you take the time, you'll be a lot more equipped, and you'll start noticing a lot more that some of the people that maybe you thought were talking sense were actually bullishing. So there you go, guys. That's my little breakdown on liberalism. And you need to take that further. You need to actually go look at some of these people like Adam Smith and the founders of our modern economics, right? And how their ideas are very much in conflict with the ideas of people like Benjamin Franklin and Alexander Hamilton. So you have to see the one good thing that came out of the whole American experiment was those ideas. So that's the kind of redeeming quality of the whole thing. But it's not assigned to any party. All right, guys. If you liked the video, Give me one of those. If you didn't like the video, give me one of these. And let me know in the comments if you still consider yourself a liberal or if you still consider yourself a conservative. Or if you are someone that believes in the common good, justice, and the general welfare. All right, I'll see you guys later. Peace.